So the baobab or baobab tree is really revered all over the Africa. It's a very, very revered tree. It offers over 300 life-sustaining uses. And so we really see this relationship of the tree of life and like all the remedies and the healing and the mythologies and the legends that go with it. A lot of times trees that are recognized as the tree of life is connected to how many healing properties through their fruits and their leaves and their bark and the ways in which cultures can work with all of the different parts of the tree to sustain and thrive and live, which is why they keep offering and tending and feeding. And this particular tree, being that it can withstand really harsh conditions, represents like resilience in the culture. And then in the time of transition or transformation, the baobab is a tree that can withstand the changing of the tides. It's a symbol of resilience. Lots of different regenerative properties and that Timo is going to go into. And one of the things that we wanted to highlight about this was like a tree that was also a passing of culture, stories, meetings, ways to commune with the ancestors of the tree, a way to pass down the legends and the teachings that are what help keep the culture resilient and strong in the face of change and transition and transformation. And this is similar to what we saw earlier with the mother tree in Mongolia, with one tree that then there's a passing of another tree becoming a holy tree, that there's a passing here that happens with this tree. The teachings are passed forward. A lot of decisions are made, in some of the cultures in Africa are made underneath this tree. It's almost like before making any large decision for the community, we got to go sit with the ancient ones and commune with them and commune with the standing ones, and make decisions together. Not just humans making decisions on their own, it's humans making decisions with the natural world and the divine realms. This is also a place where it's like a classroom or a place where people would come and learn and study. It also signaled a time of kind of returning to wholeness and bringing parts of self back into holiness again. Sometimes when we need that rest, from just so much output, or so much busyness or craziness in the world, we can lean up against one of these trees and relax, rejuvenate, reflect on all the good work that we've done. And then in that way, bring all parts of self back into wholeness again. So it's an integration period. It's like integration is really popular right now because there's like so much output, so much learning, but integration is just as valuable because then the teachings start to move inside of us. And this tree is a representative of that. Okay. And, this is interesting too, because we saw in some of the Egyptian tradition with Osiris, who's the god where you bring all parts of self back together again into wholeness. And now we see it again in relationship to this particular tree that's in the massive continent of Africa. Okay, there's a few different creation myths. The thing that's unique about this tree, we saw this in one tree before. I wonder if anyone in the group remembers what tree that was. But the tree was planted upside down by the gods. So there's a few different myths depending on the culture and tradition. But one of them is that the god Thora didn't like the baobab growing in the garden. So he plucked it out and threw it over the wall of paradise, and it fell into the earth and landed upside down. Such an interesting story. Another one is that it was planted by God. It kept walking. So God pulled it up and replanted it upside down so it wouldn't move anymore. And that's another interesting idea of like a giant tree walking and then, being pulled upside down by God to replant. It's so interesting. And then another one is that God was upon planting trees on earth, he asked the animals to help him and gave every animal a tree to plant. The hyena was connected to the baobab, was disgusted by the tree and simply pushed it, and it grew upside down. Now, these are all very interesting because inside of these, there's a story of it wasn't necessarily loved. And in this context, I want to reconsider it in the idea of the planting of the tree upside down is connecting the roots from its original roots from the sky, planting its roots in the earth, and the roots from the earth connect to the roots of the sky. Because remember, sometimes in some cultures and tradition, all the stars in the sky are the root systems of another tree. And so it's almost shifting that altogether where, roots become the sky and sky becomes the roots. And because, some of the stories, they say it's a toroidal field. This is another way to look at it. This is not one of the creation myths, but a way that I like to consider it. Here's another one. According to some of the local older legends, during creation, God's planted the first Baobab tree, and it was loved itself. It was very beautiful, and it loved who it was. And then the story is it became kind of like full of itself. And the gods found out about it, and then they yanked the Baobab out of the tree and replanted it upside down to teach it a lesson. And that's how it became known to be the upside down tree. That's really funny. Another one in African Bushman mythology, in the god Kang, Kang, a sky god, didn't like the tree growing in the garden, so he plucked the tree, threw it away from the heavens, and it fell on the earth, landed upside down, and continued to grow that way. Interesting. Also, and then in Australia, there's that same relationship with arrogance and pride. And that, similar to some of the local legends in Africa, that it was replanted because it was, too arrogant and too egotistical. And it was a way for it to kind of revision itself or be humbled. Interesting. But look at how beautiful they are if they're upside down. Like, I love this one at the top left. It's so gorgeous. They're so beautiful and majestic. And then this one at the bottom, the size of this bulb, these upside down trees. Now, one thing that's really also very beautiful to think about, particularly in the bottom one in relationship to mycelial networks, it kind of looks like a mycelial network to me. And there's this relationship of the branches and how they're very related to also what's underneath the earth and the root system, as above, so below.
I think it's fascinating how we see this concept of the upside down tree being repeated in all these cultures and the areas that it is natural to. And so one of the fascinating things in Australia is that they also use it as a storyboard. And we know of rock art and we know of cave drawings. Well, they did the same thing, but within the bark of the tree. And these are known as arborglyphs or dendroglyphs. And these are also stories. They talk about the king brown snake and its travels through the Tanami Desert region. Also, the thing about this is that when it comes to these trees, there's a sense of urgency in discovering these glyphs, because many of the most ancient baobab trees are nearing their end. And it's something we're going to talk about later on when we cover the ecological portion, is that some of these old trees are suddenly dying. And a lot of it has to do with climate change. And so this unique artwork is also temporary. And so they have to discover it and find it. And within this, they found 12 of these trees that include these pictographs etched in the bark. And what's also fascinating, and you'll see this also in rock art, there's famous caves in France where they describe motion in the pictures. And that's a really interesting thing to do when you're considering just how do you describe motion in a still form without the advent of cameras or videography. And so within these snakes, they would have them be extended or coiled, describing all of these movements of the snake. There's also depictions of kangaroos and emus. And these geometric shapes are like a collection of images. But what's also fascinating about this, and what I love about lots of the storytelling within the Australian Indigenous communities and tribes, is this concept of the dream time, but there's also this layering of mapping. And so lots of these stories can be sung to a paced meter, and they would be clicking their sticks to it to keep time. And as you're singing these things, it's telling you the journey and the path of the snake. And oftentimes these journeys and these paths were also maps on how to cross and traverse large areas of desert. And so by keeping time, they could also sing lots of these songs and find their ways through the desert. They could find water, they could find landmarks, places of sacred importance as well. And so that has that layering as well, which I find really interesting.